Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Not so, Minnesota Twins fans, but we're here to tell you why the Twins aren't as in dire straits as maybe some of the national nut jobs would say, but not before you get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Twins. I'm one of your hosts, Brendan Warne, and I have been watching the Twins for 30 years, covering them for about half that long. I am joined, as I am pretty much always, by Mr. Dave Brown, and he is a BBWAA member who has been around the block a time or two, has voted on the Hall of Fame a couple times now. Dave, how's it going?
Just refining my national nut jobness. No.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. We're so pleased that you have made Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And, of course, it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Love to hear from our everydayers in the chat all the time, so feel free to be active in the comments. You can find Dave's work at Zone Coverage and many other places. You can find mine on the Access Twins newsletter. But, again, we love to hear from you. And let's keep moving, though. On today's episode, we are going to break down why maybe the initial panic, while not unmerited, about the Twins at the trade deadline or how they approach the trade deadline, we're going to take a look at how it may have been overblown by, I mean, not necessarily only the national types. There were a lot of local types, too, that were insistent that this team was in real trouble. And this isn't overreacting either to the team going 3-3 through the first six out of the gates. Mind you, the Carlos Correa-led Astros are 2-4 since the deadline. But we got a lot to get to. I want to talk about why I still believe in the foundation of this team. I still believe in the secondary pieces. And beyond that, there's still some things to work with. But Dave, initially, I have a tweet. There's always a tweet that I personally recirculated today saying, gauge how hot of a take this is. The Twins will be better after the deadline than they were before it. And I said that at the beginning of the bloodletting, not at the end of it. I want to ask you, how hot was that take at the time? And has anything changed in the last six games that makes you say,
It was, I thought it was one of the more thoughtful, curiosity-piquing, P-I-Q-U, that kind of peak, comments that anyone made in the past few days. I thought it was, I liked, I got an optimistic vibe from it. You were asking a question, or was it a question? It was kind of like a half question. But I liked, and I think it was a good way to put what the Twins have done, what they had to do, what they might still need to work on as far as the front office goes. But if you keep everything in mind, from who's on the roster to the minor leagues to the organizational philosophy, and its success rate with developing players in recent history, I think fans should be certainly no less optimistic than they were before the trades were made. It was an emotional, psychological jolt that happened, and it was maybe a little bit of a comeuppance in a sense for what we thought was a contending team that is, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could contend for a playoff spot. There's 6.5 games out, and they have 48 games to play. So we're not going to dwell too much on that point. For
the Freaky Friday sequel comes out on Friday. We're recording on Thursday, and I even made a joke about this. that if the Tigers and Twins are doing a Freaky Friday thing from last year and the Twins take off here, I don't know. I think that would be hysterical. Obviously, I don't think it's happening, but
it would be really funny though. It would be. It is
exceptionally funny.
I haven't taken a super deep dive into exactly what's wrong with the Tigers. We sort of mentioned this the other day too.
Their bullpen's not very good, I don't think.
Their bullpen is not very good. Last year it was better than it pitched better than this.
Yeah,
that's been a big deal. A lot of guys have stopped hitting too. They had some issues with the starting pitching after the first 2 or 3 guys in the rotation as well. So, not always Scooble going out there every time. Jack isn't on it like he was last year, and some of the other players are either injured or not. They're going through some let's just say valleys right now in that rotation. So I guess if you look at it like that, there's a possibility. Now does that mean the Twins necessarily can take the form of the 2024 Tigers for the rest of the way? I don't know about that either, but I think it could be interesting. It's certainly it's still like 11 games difference. I mean, I don't know if they have that kind of turnaround in them, but as far as getting ahead in the Central, but making a game of it in the playoffs, possibly. But bigger picture, they still have that core we talked about. They still have Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez and Byron Buxton. They don't have Correa anymore. But here comes Luke Keyshaw, and he's been out of his mind, terrific. And there's lots of other good little indicators of what's going on. I think that their attitude is better just because there's like been a weight lifted a little bit. I think they've, the Twins, it would be difficult to persuade anybody that they made their team better for this season based on the moves that they made at the deadline. But at the same time, I think there is just a little bit of an easement of the pressure, and there's this other possibility of some players like Keyshaw, Buxton coming back, Pablo coming back someday, where they still have a lot of good pieces on this team. And if the tattered bullpen doesn't ruin things for them, I think you're going to get a chance to see what a lot of the players in the team can do in a positive way the rest of the season. It isn't just waiting until next year, I don't think.
Yeah, and that Buxton return may be imminent. Pablo, obviously, a little further off. And I want to emphasize, too, that part of my thought process was just rooted in how bad it had gotten or how bad it felt. There's been times in recent years, and I think there's AL Central teams that maybe typify this better than most, but teams that are better than the sum of their parts. You look at them and you're like, I don't really understand how that team contended, but they had the secret sauce. They had a manager that really pushed all the right buttons. The Twins were the exact opposite of that. They were never the sum of their parts. And for whatever reason, I mean, terrible sequencing when it came to blow up innings or Griffin Jacks having the ERA he did made no sense based on this stuff and all the profile that he had, secondary stats, etc. They were never the sum of their parts, not even the sum, let alone greater than the sum. They were always lesser than. And I think they needed a refresh. I don't know what we'll find out at the end of the year when Dan Hayes does an autopsy with all the info and intel he has and, looser lips in the off season and that sort of thing. But I think we're going to find out something was going on that we had no idea about, that was a cloud over this team in addition to ownership. Or maybe it was just ownership and these guys are also new. They don't care about it yet, or they know it's almost out of here, whatever. But I think you can't overemphasize, simply put, how much value there was on just hitting the reset button. This is not us overreacting, or at least not me, and I don't think you either, on the team being 3-3 after 6 games. I mean, 500 is not a huge bar to clear, but they haven't been there much this year outside of that ridiculous 13-game winning streak. So I feel like you don't have to be talking out of both sides of your mouth to say that they've been better, but the team's skill-wise, you can definitely see it's different. It's allocated differently, and the bullpen is weaker, but they may still end up playing better ball down the last 7 weeks of the season.
True. In addition to the things that they weren't doing well in the first half, they did have another more bad luck. I mean, lots of 2-out runs given up by the pitching staff, and things that certainly at some point in a 162 game season, you figure there's got to be an expiration date on some of the stuff that goes on. But you would think. But and you touched on something. There's new, and I think there's still newer players on the way. Keyshaw, it's kind of like how people lay an entire organization's history on whatever the current team is. So, like, let's just say the Cubs. That's the most obvious example. The lovable losers, the really bad luck, the lack of winning, the decades and decades of dysfunction or bad luck or whatever it is that happens to a baseball team doesn't necessarily and usually doesn't have anything to do with the current guys. They didn't do that. They did it for a year or two. And so Keyshaw doesn't know whatever has been dysfunctional about the Twins. Keyshaw doesn't have anything to do with that. And there's other players that are kind of an example of that too. So it's you're getting a few different faces in there. They took 9 guys off the roster. Yes, they left the bullpen very light, but at the same time, it's not a completely new team, but definitely a reset has happened. There's been a change in the attitude, just a different attitude. Not necessarily like it was bad before and now it's great. I don't even mean that. I just mean there's a slate that has been wiped clean to an extent going forward. So are they, is it too late in the year to really do anything about that in the standings? Probably, possibly, for sure. But I think it's going to be a positive thing that the Twins did this roster comeuppance here at the trade deadline. It's going to be positive.
You made an interesting point, too. Trevor May in 2019, after the Twins went down 0-2 to the Yankees, said, we're aware of the history of this team, even though we don't have a hand in it. We're aware, and we don't want to diminish the importance of it in the eyes of fans, because fans stay. Players come and go. Right. But he's like, it also is a little, he didn't say unfair, but he could have unfair to have that on their ledger. And so, it's a dynamic that I think a fan should know the nuance of, rather than just being mad when a player says, we don't really feel accountable for the Twins losing in 2004 when I was 13 years old, if you're a 30-some-year-old player now. So, it definitely needed a refresh, to say the least. Well, let's take our first pause. When we come back, I want to talk about the foundation of this team that remains and how strong it is, or how strong I think it is. And we can kind of compare notes from that. But again, first, a quick word. Well, we got some old friends back in business with us. It's Prize Picks, and this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy sports platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason already heating up. I know my Vikings are playing this Saturday. College football not far behind, and it's the perfect time to lock in your season-long more than or less than picks for the 2025 football season, all before week 1 kicks off. Again, you remember that old more than or less than on stat categories. They want to do it season long with you. Whether you've got your eyes on big name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the game. You're looking at someone like Josh Allen throwing for 30 touchdown passes, let's say, or 29.5, 27.5, depending on what day and what time you check those things. That's basically the more than or less than, is you're choosing from a number of different players. So you get to go choose the player you wish, more than or less than on the stats they give you. You can match them up and do all different sorts of ways. And that's how the winnings roll in. And the flex play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you could still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. Run your game. So, Dave, I like to say you strip it down to the studs. My house flooded in 2002, the summer of, and in our basement we had to strip it to the studs. We had sewage backup. It was disgusting. TMI. But when you strip it to the studs, dry it out, build it again. My theory is you stripped it out to the studs, and your studs are actual studs. They are your pillars, but Pablo Lopez, stud. Joe Ryan, stud. Byron Buxton, stud. I still believe Royce Lewis can be a stud. Luke Keeschel may be a stud. You do have enough pillars. We have seen teams go to the playoffs and make noise in the playoffs with this number of difference-making players and a good supporting cast. Am I crazy to say that this is not a team that is so bereft of talent that you have to say, geez, the only way that they're doing anything next year is if they add 3 free agents or make another big trade? I honestly think sort out what they have, and they've got enough foundational talent to still be a pretty damn good team next year.
Yeah, if your context is what's going to happen next year, and of course we still have the sale hanging over our heads. So that's kind of a little bit of a bummer. But yeah, when you look at the rest of this season, maybe there's not that much time, not enough time to really make some noise. Or we'll see if Pablo how healthy he is coming out of his injury. Is he going to have? Joe Ryan, I wouldn't say a slow comeback from a similar injury, but it wasn't like fast. And there were some times during spring training where we're like, is he behind a little bit? And he was behind a little bit. It just took him a little bit longer. So we'll see. But if we are talking about,
I remember that.
If we are looking at, well, how does this look? 8 months, is that the right time? Let's just say February. So 5, something like that. Maybe 6-7 months ahead. I remain encouraged. I mean, I really do. You think about, getting Lopez back and having Taj Bradley, a better version of himself after going down to the minors and doing some tweaking on his split finger fastball. Mick Abel coming up and having some more.
Nice job.
Mick Abel coming up and having some success in the major leagues. Festa not going down with more shoulder soreness. Connor Prelip, who's been just terrific in very metered innings down in the minor leagues. There's lots of good players, like difference maker type players. I'm not saying Taj Bradley and Mick Abel are going to be aces, but the starting rotation for next spring looks great the way it is, and that is without worrying about bringing a free agent or like somebody from the minors who's had no experience in the majors. I like, they completely they tore down the studs and down to the studs and even deeper in the bullpen. But Topa and Sands and Festa and maybe SWR and Prelip and Adams, you can work with that kind of thing. You can win games with that. It might not necessarily happen this late summer and early fall, but there's a lot to work with there. There's a lineup that, when you look at Clemens, Keeschel, Lee, Lewis, Roden, Buxton, Wallner, Larnick. I mean, maybe I'd swap a couple guys, but
Outman.
Yeah, and then you have the minor league guys. Then you have Jenkins, and hopefully Rodriguez, and we'll see who else, and Culpepper at some point maybe next year. So the kids coming up, that's another reason to be optimistic. I think there are. They did not blow this up completely. So they didn't have to. There are still some things. There's a lot of ifs. There's still some things that have to happen. But I like the studs that remain and the studs to be in the minor leagues. I'm very encouraged by the future of the Twins, despite some things like ownership and whatever that are, let's just say, less encouraging.
Yeah, the studs being in place helps. And I know we get a lot of people saying, "Oh, just blow it up." Okay. Talent-wise, think about what blow-it-up teams look like. They look like the Colorado Rockies. They look like the Chicago White Sox from a year ago before some of these guys started coming through. I want to give you an example of a team that would be like, okay, this is a roster, this is an organization that needs to blow things up. I covered every single home game for the 2013 Twins, and they had a starting shortstop with a 6'11 OPS, decent defender, but nothing special. A starting center fielder with a 597 OPS. When he stunk, he went down to the minors, and the backup was 29 and had a 597 OPS.
Right.
You have just dreadful depth everywhere. I mean, Josh Willingham, terrible season after messing up his knee, was shipped out. Aaron Hicks lost rookie season. Chris Parmelee, non-factor. Ryan Domit had no mitt. Oswaldo Arcia had a little bit of a bat, but no defense. I mean, this was a team where it was literally abandon hope, all ye who enter here. And we haven't even talked about the pitching staff. Top three starters you know who combined for 60 starts on this team? Kevin Correa and Mike Pelfrey.
Big Pelf.
Yep. Scott Diamond got another 24. Samuel Deduno, 18. Pedro Hernandez, the lesser-known return in the Francisco Liriano deal, had 14 starts, and then 10 starts apiece from Andrew Albers, fun fact, Kyle Gibson, Vance Worley, and then Liam Hendricks got 8 starts with an ERA of nearly 7. That's an organization where it's like, hit the reset button. Now you had Joe Mauer and undead Justin Morneau. Morneau went and had a decent little run with the Rockies, but it was pretty much it for him with the Twins. This is not the type of talent that this team has. This team is leaps and bounds more talented than teams who flush everything and what do they call it? Rebuild. I'm so desensitized to the term. I couldn't even remember it. There's just way too much going for this current roster to rebuild just because things got a little bit dusty, a little bit, rough around the edges or maybe in the middle of it. But again, still too much talent to rebuild. It's just, that's a non-starter for me.
Yeah. And you have some options. You have some guys, you have people like Brooks Lee at shortstop who we're not ready to certainly say that he's disappointing. I think he's had some disappointing terms in terms of a couple weeks here and there or a month or whatever. And he's had that long hitting streak too, but he's a guy that you can put at shortstop until other people are ready. And then maybe he will be better than even I'm giving him credit for now. So there's not, I don't see in the lineup for the future so many holes that if they continue to have the injury issues, that's one thing. They need a little bit more luck there. So if that's better, some of the minor leaguers come up. I think there's a lot to be encouraged about as far as the 1 through 9, and then also even the bench. Next year, if the bench has got Peyton Eels on it and Outman, I don't know, maybe McCusker,
Roden,
maybe Roden. I mean, I could see him starting, but
hard to say with Larnach, Wallner, Roden, Outman. I feel like I'm talking about a law firm, but no, you're right. There's a lot of depth there, and I want to let's do this. Let's take our final break. I got a lot to get into in this final segment, so we'll be quick. But there's just, to me, still a lot of encouraging reasons why the end of this season may not be pretty. Who knows? Maybe it will be decent, and we're just not there yet. But we'll see. But let's take our last break, and then when we come back, we'll discuss that. You ever been down by the ballpark and decided at the last minute you want to head to a game with friends or family? I actually had a anniversary, I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh, let's go to a ball game, take the kids. We're the kind of family that likes to involve everyone. So our anniversaries are sometimes with the kids, the in-laws, and all that stuff. And so we're all going to a ball game. And it's exactly where Game Time comes in, because I knew if I was going to try to find tickets, now it isn't last minute, but if you do need last minute tickets, Game Time's also the way to go. But Game Time is the place to go because they're going to give you the best value for your dollar. They're going to show you where your seats are and what it looks like from there, all kinds of great stuff. And with the money that you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even maybe invite a few more people, because it's the more the merrier at the ballpark. Game Time makes all of this possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got great last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Again, toggle that all-in pricing. It was so valuable for me using the app to know what I was going to spend at the end of the transaction. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, Dave, one of the more obvious things, and maybe it's because we're so close to St. Paul, is that there are some pretty fun prospects on the horizon too that should help kind of assuage our concerns about the medium-term future. Culpepper, obviously Kalen Culpepper, not CJ Culpepper, although he could be interesting too, is certainly someone who is rising up those lists. Walker Jenkins, one of the consensus top 10, 15, 20 prospects, depending on who you ask. And Emmanuel Rodriguez, if he in fact exists. All three of those guys could be a lot of fun. I wrote down, if you look at the bones of this roster, you've got enough like guys who have at least done a little something or another in the major leagues kind of floating around. Like, you don't necessarily want to rely on Brooks Lee, Cody Clemens, Ed Julian, Austin Martin, even Jose Miranda. Like, all of those guys have had decent stretches in the major leagues, but you wouldn't want to guarantee them a job. But having them around, having them nearby, there's value to that. Now, it was tough to find that value this year because some of those guys were hurt and some of those guys, were superfluous fits with how the roster was built in an effort to contend this year. But that depth on the infield-ish side, Larnach, Wallner, Roden, Outman, your pitching staff, you have a 5 or 6 man staff even before you consider Ryan and Pablo, with Ober, Zebby, Festa, Abel, Taj, SWR. So you're obviously going to have some of those guys shake out in the bullpen where you're weak right now. I would guess SWR is going to be just an absolute beast in the bullpen. And we'll see what happens there. Who knows, too, with Travis Adams, who looked phenomenal, Andrew Morris, Marco Raya, and then Pearson Ole, who Dan Hayes said he'll be writing about it, but it sounds like he's on an experimental pitching rotation thing where he'll pitch every 4 days for a few innings. We'll see there. But in addition to the studs, there are enough secondary pieces that you don't have to rely on any one of these guys fully to take a starting job and run with it. Now, your expectations for Wallner versus someone else definitely going to be different. But again, I maintain there's enough talent in this environment to be a very, very good ball team.
I see a lot of hope with the pitching staff. The starting staff, particularly in terms of guys that I'm comfortable putting out there every 5th day. Like every one of them. Ryan, Lopez, Matthews, Taj, Abel. I think these are guys that, there's not going to be, we're not going to lean so much on, what are we going to get out of Paddock today?
PJ Walters is not going to make 8 starts for you next year.
Sure. Right. At least I don't think so. Now, it's a little more nebulous. That's a good word. In the bullpen, I think there's talent out there, but exactly how far Festa can go.
Come together? Yeah.
where, what kind of role suits SWR? Where's Prelip in terms of his, how is he far enough away from surgery that you can bring him up to the majors and have him be a regular contributor, and you're not necessarily worried about innings or use, that kind of thing. Yeah. What can Travis Adams, he had a great game the other day. Is he going to turn that into something that is sustainable, at least in the bullpen kind of thing? And what's up with Ole and Hatch and guys like that? These are, we're talking about some of these guys maybe who are in the margins a little bit, but you mentioned Marco Raya. I think he's got a chance to be a very good, at least a relief pitcher in the major leagues after getting a little more experience. There's a lot of meat on the bone, and especially in the starting rotation, and that is going to take care of a lot of worries when you have 5 guys, whoever they are, that could go out there and give you 5 or 6 innings every time and keep you ahead in the game with 1 or 2 runs allowed.
It's going to be the reverse of where they could go 5 innings with SWR and then the bullpen behind lined up quite nicely. It's going to be hopefully 6-7 innings, 5 at least, consistently, to where you can massage the bullpen a little bit. Like that, again, I go back to that 2013 team. Glenn Perkins was a tremendous closer. They had Jared Burton, who was solid. Casey Fiend was pretty good. And then it was kind of a mess. Brian Dunsing was okay. Josh Renicky, Anthony Swarzak. Like, you can piece together a bullpen, and they'll have to get creative. First, you identify who's going to stay. I would guess Topa and Sands have reasonable chances of being around next year. Sands, especially. Topa, I think he's got 1 more year of club control. But I think what happens then is it's time to get to work. You see what you have over this last 7 weeks. You prioritize free agency in that second wave like they did to get Coulomb, to get Brock Stewart was a minor league, get him healthy kind of signing. But I feel like they'll be active in that wave of free agency where, maybe a guy struck out a batter per inning but gave up too many homers, and the Twins think, have him throw his 2-seamer more or something. Like, I think they may end up needing, a couple guys off that pile, a couple guys in Topa and Sands maybe come to spring training with them, and then everything else is kind of up in the air. But a bullpen is the one thing. I mean, we're seeing the best team in the division by record deal with a shaky bullpen. A shaky bullpen will sink a lot of ships, but that means you built a ship to get there in the first place. And the point is, if they can get to that point by the deadline next year and still haven't identified relievers, that's when you go out and maybe make a move or 2. But I think you'd hope that Connor Prelip or Marco Raya or someone takes that closer role, or you find someone, maybe you get a Raisel Iglesias or someone like that on a 1-year deal, something like that. I think if I was going to be concerned about building any aspect of my team, the bullpen is where I'd be like, okay, I can do that. I can do this.
Yeah. And it's kind of the last thing that you worry about. Really, you don't want it to be a sieve out there, but you look at it's probably going to catch up to the Dodgers in the playoffs, I would imagine. But you look at where they are overall, and they've had so many problems with the bullpen. You work on having everything else be good and solid, and then put yourself in a position where you can add relief pitchers if you have to.
Well, and you get to October and you use guys like Kenta in the bullpen back in the day. Like,
sure.
That works too.
Right.
Well, anyway,
that's right. But that's the last thing. The Twins were kind of, that was the before, I guess, if we could put it in these terms, the Twins before were the strength of their team was the bullpen, and other things came in second. And that's kind of a backwards way to do it, and not necessarily ideal. And they had a really good bullpen, and they were a little less than 500 with it. Big deal. So let's do it the other way, more conventionally.
Well, and if you're not hitting to give that bullpen a lead, suddenly you're using guys in 4-2 deficits instead of leads, and that's not what you want to do either. So, well, hey, that's a wrap. We hope that you feel a little more not ambitious, uplifted about
emboldened,
hopeful, a little more hopeful about how this Twins team looks. If you're not that excited in the present, which is okay, that it shouldn't take that long to get them back up to speed. I've seen so many takes of rebuilding, multiple years of bad baseball. I do not see it happening. I think that we as a populace are going to see some good baseball, if not down the stretch, like better baseball. Not that that's a high bar to clear, but next year there should be no reason to say this team can't compete for the division. He's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warne, saying thank you so much for hanging out with us. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Twins so that you also get the other great Twins content we have for you. That is the postcast with Luke Inman live after the final out of every game. You get 2 shows for the price of 1, which is free. Also, thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen today. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On MLB game night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB game night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, he's Dave. I'm Brandon. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll see ya tomorrow night.